We're inching our way back to our $1,000 budget build roots with a slim and trim RTX 5070 build. How close can we get to those glory days? We're going to tell you all about it right here, right now on Robeytech. It is hard to build a PC on a budget right now, but we've been around long enough to either be optimistic that these days will not last, or realistic in accepting that these things will always change. So we're back with another new PC build featuring modern components, a modest budget, and to provide a step-by-step guide to help with the process. For today's build, we're looking at a $1,350 budget for a killer rig with high frame rates at both 1080p and 1440p. As always, we understand that everyone's budget is different and that prices of components and availability of GPUs are both pretty bad at the moment. We just want to give you a picture of the leanest machine possible so that when the time comes, you're ready to rock. And don't worry, we're still going to talk about part recommendations, show you where to get the best deals, and reference the live stream for step-by-step instructions on how to build this machine for yourself. Now, sticking with our budget build rules, we're going to be using our 5-point weight system to show how this budget build is balanced within these following categories. Number one, price, or how well did we use our budget? And really, since we're breaking the budget, our focus is going to be on thriftiness elsewhere. CPU power, GPU power, parts and features like RGB, CPU cooler, RAM speed, and SSD performance, and finally, aesthetics. And remember, this video is only one part of the story. You can watch the step-by-step guide with all the close-up shots, explanations of what we're doing and why, and to help you build a PC like this for yourself. You can find that over at Robeytech Live or go right here. You can go ahead and pull that video up in the tab while we're going in breaking down this video. And the second part is head over to robeytech.com/budget build, click on the $1,350 one right there. It gives you all the performance, it shows you the part lists and all that stuff as well. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell here at Robeytech and Robeytech Live so you don't miss other budget build streams like that one. All right, so the build that we mentioned right here is focused on getting modern features at a low price while still being able to play in the 1440p sandbox. And helping us get there is the RTX 5070. While it isn't an RTX 4090 replacement by any stretch of the imagination, the RTX 5070 does get you that great performance for the dollar with features like DLSS transformer and DLSS 4 multi-frame generation. Again, we realize that these GPUs are hard to find items, especially at MSRP, but again, we're hoping to see prices and availability normalize over time. And like all of our other build guides, we encourage you to take inspiration from what you see, and hey, maybe there's another case, cooler, or video card that you saw reviewed here at Robeytech that you like even better, and that's what you choose to put in the build. Okay, speaking of parts, we need to walk through them and talk about the 5 categories as we do. Starting with our CPU and motherboard, we're using the AMD Ryzen 5 7600 with the Asus TUF Gaming B650 Plus Wi-Fi motherboard. The Ryzen 5 7600 is a 6-core 12-thread CPU that provides a modest platform for gaming and also gets users onto the AM5 platform. One of the things we really like about the CPU is that the default TDP is only 65 watts. This means that it's really well suited for smaller builds and can thrive with using only an air cooler. Now, the TUF Gaming B650 Plus Wi-Fi may be an older board, but it does have a reinforced PCI 4 lane for our GPU. It has one PCI 5 M.2 slot and 2 PCI 4 M.2 slots, all with heat sinks, which is cool. That being said, we are eyeing the possibility of moving to the Asus TUF Gaming B850 Plus Wi-Fi soon, so if you want more features like PCI Gen 5 GPU lane, Wi-Fi 7, you're going to be looking at an additional $30. So for our parts and features and CPU power scores, we are using an older motherboard and CPU. This will likely place our parts and features score in the middle for now. The CPU score will land squarely in the middle as well. Now, if this CPU was a college student, it would be 2 solid A's, 2 B's, and 1 C student. And hey, C's get the degree in some cases. As for CPU cooling, we have another Thermalright cooler. This is the Assassin X 120 air cooler. This thing has a thinner heatsink than the Phantom Spirit we've used in the past. It's got a single 120mm fan, it's got addressable RGB, and a price under $19. And with our CPU being rated for 65 watts, this thing is gonna do great. Could we have used the stock AMD cooler and saved you some money? Yes, but we like this one. So it'll take some budget points since we're going over $1,000, but we'll get some aesthetic points for getting the RGB. The one thing I'll say is that this cooler gives me the heebie-jeebies when I touch the heatsink. It's not a good sensory experience, but we don't have a score for that yet. Now, moving on to RAM, we're using a 32 gig G.Skill Ripjaw M5 Neo RGB kit. This thing is rated at 6,000 megatransfers with a cast latency of 36. And with Neo in the name, we know it has Expo profiles for AMD. We could have saved a few dollars by going with a non-RGB kit, but at the time of putting this together, the price differences were pretty negligible. A couple of dollars for a bit of RGB is absolutely worth it. Now, this didn't quite have the same low latency that we've seen in other RAM kits, which isn't horrible, so we're gonna leave parts and features where it is, but we're bumping the aesthetic score up because we're adding RGB RAM. As an aside though, if you want to spend an extra $20 for some faster but equally stylish RAM, we actually scouted out another G.Skill kit that we'll put down in the description below. Now moving on to storage, we're using the 2TB Kingston NV3 NVMe drive. This is a newer drive to our budget builds, but we really like the fact that we have faster read and write speeds than most entry-level PCI 4 drives, and at around $130 for 2 TB, it's just hard to beat. Could we have saved money and go with the 1 TB drive? Yes, but with games like Oblivion just dropping like 100 gig download, we're beginning to wonder if 1 TB is even enough for a modern rig. So for scoring, we're going to bump parts and features up since this is a fast drive at a great price and it doubles our entry point for storage. Now for our case, we have an old favorite, the Fractal Pop Air RGB. Now there is a lot to love about this case. It has some interesting choices if you want to do some different colors. It comes with 3 120mm ARGB fans and an RGB controller, and the open front will set our Thermalright CPU cooler up for success. And finally, for the PSU, and this is going to come as no surprise if you've been around Robeytech Live, we're using the Asus Tough Gaming 750 watt gold PSU. We love this PSU for a lot of reasons. The first reason is that the 16-pin GPU cable is rated for 600 watts, so if you ever wanted to upgrade to a more powerful GPU, you could absolutely do that. The included cables are just a treat to manage, and lastly, they just look so nice that you really don't necessarily need cable extensions. As far as PSUs go, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but those three things we just mentioned make it worth every penny in our opinion. When we put this all together, the total cost before taxes and shipping comes in at around $1,350. So if we're going to score it in our 5 categories, here's where things would land. CPU would be landing kind of in the middle. GPU power does upper mid-range. Parts and features land in the higher mid-range. As for aesthetics, we're staying in the upper mid-range, but you might think otherwise. And finally, for our budget score, while we broke our $1,000 rule, we did keep a lot of things pretty lean. We did spend a little more on some creature comforts. So if $1,000 is a 1, we'll have to call this like a 0.5 out of 10. All right, let's talk about gaming and performance. Now we're going to throw some charts up on the screen here, and there's a lot of info here since we tested 12 games at 2 different resolutions with a mix of features, so feel free to pause. Now the numbers we're going to show you first here are the raw 1440p. That means no DLSS, no multi-frame generation or ray tracing. And since there are a lot of numbers here, we're going to call out some highlights. Most of our tested titles exceeded averages of 80 frames per second, and half of these exceeded 100 frames per second on average, which is fantastic news for this rig. A few standout examples include Indiana Jones with an average of 147 frames per second at high settings and nearly 110 frames per second in Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra. It's also worth noting here that we test Fortnite at low settings in order to maximize frame rates for competitive play, and that was over 200. So what we're seeing in these charts is that most of these games are running at the highest available in-game presets, with the exception of Fortnite and Indiana Jones. Now when we add DLSS, we're also adding real-time ray tracing, so you're going to see some dips in a couple titles, while others you'll see performance on par with their raw performance or better. Games like Starfield, Marvel Rivals, and even Black Myth Wukong see some nice jumps in average frame rates here. And as you've probably noticed, when we add in frame generation and multi-frame generation, we really start to see the system shine when it comes to average frame rates. What's really important to point out here is that for the best experience with MFG, the raw performance should be as far north of 60 FPS as possible. And as you can see, we're hitting those metrics without adding ray tracing or path tracing before DLSS. That said, the games still look amazing on this thing, and that's not to say that you couldn't enable ray tracing. Just understand in some titles, you might take a hit. Now, gaming performance data is great, but how did the case and air cooler handle temps? Well, our 7600 stayed in an average of around 76 degrees Celsius under full CPU load. As far as the RTX 5070, it averaged around 74 to 75 degrees Celsius in firm arc. As for gaming temps, we averaged around 70 to 71 degrees on both GPU and CPU throughout our gaming tests. Those are really good temps, but also keep in mind that when we did those testing, we didn't do a fan curve on our GPU or our CPU. We could have spent more time tweaking them, but out of the box, the Thermalright Assassin X and the Fractal Pop Air did a really nice job of just supplying air to our components all up. As we wrap this one up, all of our budget builds, the parts list, the performance charts, and the live streams can be found over at Robeytech.com. And if you have any other components you want to try in this build, be our guest. Of course, there are some limits in what you can do with the mix of parts. For example, and someone did ask this on the live stream, you aren't going to want to try and slap a 9950X 3D in here without swapping a cooler first. But all in all, this is a super flexible platform, and the case is super easy to build inside of. Obviously, this price point is assuming that you can get these components in MSRP. That being said, we've seen market shift. Price fluctuates and parts change, so take the build here as a guide to help you figure out what your build is when it's time. And just last week, we were able to see people get these GPUs at MSRP from places like Best Buy. So budget build dreams are still alive, and you might just need to be patient. And with that, we're gonna close out our rundown of the Robeytech Trim and Slim RTX 5070 PC featuring the AMD Ryzen 5 7600 and the NVIDIA RTX 5070. And as always, please let us know if you built this one yourself by joining the Robeytech Discord. This is also a great place to ask questions that you may have along the way. And if this configuration doesn't quite match what you're looking for, we have more on the website and more coming soon. We'll be building these systems live over at twitch.tv/Robeytech or at Robeytech Live right here on YouTube, and we'll have a breakdown video like this one right here on the main Robeytech channel. So slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring the notification bell so that you get a notification each and every time we post a video like this right here at Robeytech. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.